Good evening. I feel very blessed this morning and this evening because I've gotten to come and worship with you all, and also my dad, who I haven't gotten to see in months, and he hasn't been out here since I first got out here, is visiting. So it's been great to have him here, and he hasn't heard me preach since I was in college, and so hopefully I've changed a lot, but a lot of you have been kind of talking me up to him, so there's a bit of a extra pressure I'm feeling tonight, but in all seriousness, it's been a great encouragement. Your words are very kind and encouraging to me. Um, this evening, we begin our transition from the Psalms into the Proverbs. And I'm very excited because Proverbs is one of my favorite books of the Bible. It's a wealth of knowledge and insight, and there's many lessons we can learn from the book. A few weeks ago, I preached on Psalm chapter 1. If you remember, in that psalm, there were two paths of life laid out. The path of the righteous and the path of the wicked is what we call a wisdom psalm. It's a presentation of the life of the wise one and how they live. And it's not very detailed in what that walk looked like. So after going through that psalm, we see the benefit of living wisely, of living righteously, but we ask ourselves, how then do we live according to that path? What does that look like? Now, some people struggle with that idea. They look at the Bible and think it doesn't necessarily apply to modern life. It was good for a life back then, and the ideals are great, but how do we apply that to a modern life? The Bible doesn't talk about modern issues or modern applications. So, is the Bible out of date then and not really beneficial? The answer to that is no. Even though the Bible was written thousands of years ago, its principles, its lessons, its morals, its insights are just as applicable today as they were then. And Proverbs is an excellent place to start when asking ourselves, how can we live a beneficial and fruitful life today? Proverbs is a book of wisdom. It is mostly written by King Solomon, the wisest man to walk the earth, to his son. It's meant to train his son, to teach his son, so that when he is king after Solomon, he walks rightly, follows the words of God, and lives a life that is blessed and where he rules in a good way. It is a book of wisdom, just like Psalms is and Job is, but it's very different in that most of Proverbs are bite sized pieces of wisdom, very quick succession, and very compact, and it's all over the place, and it's going from one idea to the next. It's very quick, but it's also very insightful. And there's a lot I could say about the Proverbs, and there's many points to be made from it. And sadly, we only get about a week and a half or 2 weeks in the book, so I can't tell you every lesson you could learn from Proverbs, from wisdom. But my goal this evening is to hopefully show you the value of wisdom that we can get from this book, show you the importance that wisdom has in the life of a Christian, and hopefully encourage you to seek wisdom. Because that is ultimately the goal of the book of Proverbs, to encourage the reader to seek out wisdom. And our focus this evening is going to be in chapter 1, those first 7 verses that Samuel read a few moments ago. This is the introduction to the book, the sort of mission statement of Proverbs. I'm going to read it again. Proverbs 1, 1 through 7. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel, for learning wisdom and discipline, for understanding insight, sayings, for receiving prudent instruction, for righteousness, justice, and integrity, for teaching shrewdness to the inexperienced, knowledge and discretion to a young man. Let a wise person listen and increase in learning, and let a discerning person obtain guidance. For understanding a proverb or a parable, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and discipline. The ultimate goal of the Proverbs is right there at the beginning of verse 2, for learning wisdom and discipline. And that is our goal as well. And the first question we have to ask ourselves when entering a study of the book of Proverbs, when considering these things, is what is wisdom? It's not an easy question to answer, I'll say that at least. Wisdom is a sort of abstract concept, a vague concept, and one that is not easily defined. Wisdom and knowledge are terms that tend to get intertwined and interchanged. And so we sometimes equate the two. They both play very similar roles and uh, work together in many ways. So I've heard the working definition for wisdom to be knowledge or intelligence that is applied. It's applied intelligence or applied knowledge. And it's a definition that works to some degree, but I think there are some major flaws in it. When you look out in the world, there are incredibly intelligent people, well-studied people, knowledgeable people, and yet those people, some of the most successful, some of the richest, most innovative people also tend to be the most foolish in the world. How often do look at the news and you see as the headlining front page the story of this intelligent, successful man or woman, someone who is innovative, runs a successful company, is well respected in every aspect of their life, yet they're caught up in some foolish scandal that you think they should know better. They're one of the smartest people in the world. Why are they doing something that we would consider so foolish? Make a mistake or get into a scandal that ruins their reputation or their careers or even their entire lives. How does someone so smart make such a foolish decision? That's because wisdom and intelligence aren't necessarily the same thing. Tremper Longman, in his book on the Proverbs, which was the textbook I used in school, How to Read the Proverbs, he equates wisdom not necessarily to one person's IQ. He doesn't equate it to that sort of intelligence, but he views wisdom as more aligned with EQ, the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence of a person. And I think biblical wisdom lines up with that much more. Emotional intelligence deals much more with how we handle relationships in our lives, how we handle conflicts when they arise in life, how do we address situations, how do we exercise self control, do we exercise self control? All of those fall under that emotional intelligence and falls under what the Proverbs are teaching us. The Proverbs, in many ways, teaches us how to act within our relationships with other people in every aspect of life. Your neighbors, it teaches us to treat them kindly. As Jesus tells us to love our neighbors, the Proverbs teaches us how to do that. It says, don't take advantage of your neighbor. Don't go over and kick over the boundary stone that lines your property to steal your neighbor's property. Or don't swear falsely at court against your neighbor to take from them. If someone is in need, give to them. Don't hold back. These snippets of wisdom teaching us how to handle our relationships. It gives marriage advice, saying it is, a danger to be quarrelsome in marriage. It's better, for a man to be out in a desert than be under the roof of a quarrelsome wife. In Proverbs 31 is an entire chapter dedicated to finding the right kind of spouse and what a beneficial and profitable marriage looks like. Or looking at dealing with ourselves and self-control, the Proverbs handle that as well. In James chapter 3, he talks about what is probably the most difficult thing for anyone to have self-control on, which is what they say. Something I have a lot of difficulty in because it's easy to react to someone. It's easy to shout out in anger if someone has wronged you. It's easy to sin with your tongue, and James makes that a very obvious point. In James chapter 3, beginning in verse 1, it says, "Not many should become teachers, my brothers, because you know that we will receive a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is mature, able also to control the whole body. Now, if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we direct their whole bodies. And consider ships. Though they're very large and driven by fierce winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the wind of the pilot directs. So, too, Though the tongue is a small part of the body, it boasts great things. Consider how a small fire sets ablaze a large forest, and the tongue is a fire. The tongue is a world of unrighteousness, is placed among our members. It stains the whole body, sets the course of life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Every kind of animal, bird, reptile, and fish is tamed and has been tamed by humankind, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue we bless our Lord, our Father, and with it we curse people who are made in God's likeness. Blessing and cursing come out of the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, these things should not be this way. Does a spring pour out sweet and bitter water with the same opening? Can a fig tree produce olives, my brothers and sisters, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a saltwater spring yield fresh water. James says, if you're able to control what you say, you are a perfect person. He also says, no one is able to fully control what they say. The tongue, although it's a very small part of our body, and although we might not always think the words that we say have that much meaning, our words are incredibly powerful. They can build up people, encourage, uplift. They could also quickly destroy. The tongue is equated to a forest fire. It's like a spark, and the winds carry it, and it can set an entire forest ablaze. That's an image that we can all resonate with or think of here in California. The tongue can be very dangerous, so it's incredibly important that we are careful in what we say. So we ask ourselves, how can we have control over our words? How can we exercise this self-control over something that seems impossible to do? Well, the Proverbs is full of how can we control our speech. When is it good to be silent? When we do respond, how should we respond? It is scattered throughout the entire book. It's incredibly important. So the Proverbs teaches us how to live our lives in these ways, how to exercise self-control, how to deal with our relationships, how to deal with conflict. To put it very simply, wisdom is a guiding force in how to live our lives. It is in itself a lifestyle. So the next question we have to ask ourselves was, how do I then apply wisdom? Wisdom is so valuable, but how do I even begin applying wisdom? Well, there are certain tools of wisdom that Solomon brings up in this first introduction. Tools of how we can use wisdom in our life. And if we are lacking in these things, then we are lacking in wisdom. And the first and most important thing about wisdom, the first and most important tool of wisdom is instruction. If we want wisdom, we have to go out and learn wisdom. If we are unwilling to learn, if we despise instruction, which Solomon warns his son in the 8th verse not to do, if we despise instruction, we don't want to hear any lessons, any guidance, any correction, then we're not going to gain any wisdom. We're not going to better live our lives. What does this mean? It means we need humility. We need to humble ourselves and say, there's something that I need to learn. There's something missing in my life. And if I don't get that, then my life is not complete and my life is at risk. We need to be willing to learn no matter what stage of learning we are at. There's not a point where you say, oh, I'm wise now. There's nothing left that I have to learn. That's far from the truth. In Solomon's introduction, going back to Proverbs chapter 1, he says this in verse 5. Let a wise person listen and increase in learning, and let a discerning person obtain guidance. People who are already wise continue to learn. You might realize that the more that you do learn, the more that you grow in knowledge and wisdom and in understanding, you realize how much more there is that you don't know. You understand that gap that you still have to cross. And so there's never a point where you say, I've learned all there is out there. I have gained all the wisdom in the world. There's nothing left for me to learn. Solomon, who was the wisest man to walk the earth, still had things to learn. He still had counsel where he went and spoke with others to gain their wisdom and understanding. If someone like Solomon tells us to continue to learn no matter where you are, we should take that to heart. So make it an active effort to learn wisdom. It's not something that happens passively just through life experience. That's one source, but wisdom is something that we need to seek out in our knowledge. Seek wise people, seek wise counsel. Another very important tool in handling wisdom in our lives is what he mentions in verse 4. For teaching shrewdness to the inexperienced, knowledge and discretion to a young man. This idea of discretion or discernment is also right up there with instruction as one of the most important tools that we have in handling biblical wisdom. Discernment means to be able to look at a situation and judge what is the best course of action. How do I best handle this situation? Just like how the Psalms have many different styles and ways of expressing ideas, and we read those differently, the Proverbs are also not all the same. There are some Proverbs which are true 100% of the time. We see that in every case, that proverb is true. When a proverb says, don't lie in court, don't bear false witness, that's a 10 commandment. It's also a proverb. We know that's true 100% of the time. There's never a case where lying in court is okay and the wise thing to do. But there are some proverbs which are true most of the time, are true depending on the situation. They're what my professor Doy Moyer would call a truism. Sayings of wisdom that are mostly true, depending on circumstances. To give you, I think, the clearest example from the Proverbs, turn with me to Proverbs chapter 26 and verse 4. Proverbs 26 and verse 4 says this: Don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, or you'll be like him yourself. It's a very clear statement. Don't address a fool's foolishness, lest you sound like a fool yourself. Understandable. But then verse 5 says this: Answer a fool according to his foolishness, or he'll become wise in his own eyes. You might just be reading through Proverbs and stop and think, that sounds like a complete contradiction. Those are two proverbs back to back that say the complete opposite things. Don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, then immediately after, answer a fool according to his foolishness. You might ask, which one is true then? Does one contradict the other? Is one true and one false? Well, the answer is both are true, depending on the situation. And that's where discretion and discernment comes into play. We need to be able to judge how we apply wisdom in different situations. And that requires us to know the person we are dealing with in a situation. Is this a person who will be able to listen if I address their foolishness, or will they close off their ears and shout over me and not want to pay attention to my words? You have to know a person. You have to know a situation. It requires a lot of responsibility on our part to make these personal judgments. That's the challenge of applying wisdom. And being able to discern, being able to judge situations comes with acquiring knowledge over time. The more that we learn about wisdom, the more that we have experiences in dealing with wisdom, we learn what is the proper way to judge a situation. And we'll get more into discernment later on, but it's something for us to really consider and think about. How do we address a situation? When do we apply certain parts of wisdom? The last tool of wisdom I want us to consider is the other side of instruction. We have receiving instruction, which is incredibly important, but we also have the responsibility of passing down wisdom. The entire book of Proverbs is Solomon wanting to pass down his wisdom, everything he's learned, to his son so that his son can be successful. He wants his son to be successful. That's the purpose of wisdom. It's so that we can be successful in this life, to avoid conflict in this life, to avoid situations that could have been easily avoided. Solomon wants that for his son, so he teaches him wisdom so he doesn't go out and make foolish mistakes for himself and then come to know what's true. In the same way, we should want to pass down wisdom to those younger than us, to those around us, so that they can succeed in this life and not make these foolish mistakes. Parents want to teach their children what's right and what's wrong, what dangers to avoid, because they don't want to see their children hurt. They don't want to see them suffering in life or falling short. They want their children to succeed. So when a parent tells their child, hey, don't touch that stove, they're doing it because they know that that's going to create pain if you do that. They know what the wise choice is. Their child might not understand that, but they're guiding them to the right choice. That's how we should handle teaching wisdom. As a trainee here, I'm getting vast amounts of wisdom from Mike. Warnings of what to avoid as a preacher, what mistakes to avoid, what I should be doing right, how can I express ideas in a better way. Those are ideas and wisdoms I could have learned on my own, but it would have come from failures and fall shorts. But because Mike has given me his wisdom from his experience, from his learning, I can hopefully now avoid those mistakes from gaining wisdom. And so I hope we see the importance then of passing down this wisdom to others because we want others to succeed. That is our ultimate goal in sharing our wisdom and teaching. And it's a responsibility that we have as those who have wisdom. And so we must know what wisdom is. We must be able to apply it, use these tools. And the last question that we really must consider, the big question, is what is our ultimate source of wisdom? Where do we go to get wisdom? What kind of wisdom should we be living by? There's wisdom from all sorts of places, all different sources, and not all wisdom is good wisdom. Going back to James chapter 3, he says this. James 3 and verse 13, he says, "Who among you is wise and understanding? By his good conduct, he should show his works. He should show that his works are done and the gentleness that comes from wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambitions in your heart, don't boast and deny the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there is disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom from above is pure, and then peace loving, gentle, compliant, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without pretense. And the fruit of righteousness is sown in peace by those who cultivate peace." James says there are two very different types of wisdom. There's the wisdom of the flesh, of the world. That is not a wisdom that helps us in this life. There's things in the world that people call wise, but it's wise if you're living a sinful life. There are people who say, you know, here's a way you can cheat your friend or neighbor out of something. Here's a way you can manipulate someone to get what you want. They think it's wise, they think it's shrewd, they think it's smart, but it's destructive, not only to the person they're hurting, but to themselves as well. And if you get caught doing something wrong, here's how you can lie your way through court to not get any charges. Here's the lawyer you need to use who can get you out of any bad situation. They think this is wisdom, but it is in its essence really foolishness. But there's a different quality of wisdom in God's wisdom. It's pure, it's righteous, and it sows peace and gentleness. It brings about good things. The ultimate source of that wisdom ultimately is God. Over in Proverbs chapter 8, wisdom in this chapter is personified as a woman speaking about the value of wisdom. And in Proverbs chapter 8, in verse 22, wisdom talks about how God uses wisdom. Proverbs 8, verse 22, "The Lord acquired me at the beginning of his creation, before his works of long ago. I was formed before ancient times, from the beginning, before the earth began. I was born when there was no watery depths and no springs filled with water. Before the mountains were established, prior to the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the land, the fields, or the first soil on earth, I was there, when he established the heavens, when he laid out the horizon on the surface of the ocean, when he placed the skies above, and when the fountains of the ocean gushed out, when he set a limit for the sea, so that the waters would not violate his command. When he laid out the foundations of the earth, I was a skilled craftsman beside him. I was his delight every day, always rejoicing before him. I was rejoicing in his inhabited world, delighting in the children of Adam. What Proverbs says here is that God created wisdom. Wisdom was there before anything in the world was created, before man was created, before the foundations was created, before the water was created. Wisdom was created first. And God used wisdom as a tool to bring about everything in this world. You could see wisdom and how God set in order all the processes of the universe. You see wisdom and how God created man and sets the relationship he wanted with man. You see wisdom in all of that. God created perfect wisdom and used perfect wisdom to create all things. Therefore, God is the only source of perfect, pure, peace sowing, gentle wisdom, that kind of wisdom that James 3 was talking about. And so, if we're seeking that wisdom and the blessings that come with living by that wisdom, who else can we go to than the source? King Solomon, the wisest man to walk the earth, the one who wrote these proverbs, how did he gain all of his vast wisdom? He got it from going to the source. While he was offering sacrifices to God, God came to him and said, I will grant you one thing. If it's riches, if it's power, if it's land, whatever you want, I will give it to you. Solomon says, I want wisdom to rule right. He knew that God was the ultimate source of perfect wisdom, and so he relied on him to gain that wisdom. In the same sense, we have to go to the source to get this wisdom. James chapter 1 also teaches us this. James chapter 1 and verse 5, he says, Now if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives to all generously and ungrudgingly, and it will be given to him. But let him ask in faith without doubting, for the doubter is like the surging sea, driven and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord, being double minded and unstable in all his ways. If we are wanting this kind of wisdom, go pray to God about it. James says he wants to give you wisdom generously, just as a parent guides their child in wisdom so that they are successful. That's what God wants for us as his children. He wants us to succeed. He wants us to do right. He wants us to live wisely. He wants us to come to him for that wisdom. So pray to God for wisdom. And if you're struggling with discernment, with thinking to ourselves, how do I handle this difficult situation I'm in? Go to God in prayer. Ask God, guide me through this conflict. Guide me through this situation. Show me what the right path is. Show me what the answer is. And go to God's wisdom when you're seeking it. Look through the Proverbs. See its value. See its guidance. Over and over again in the Proverbs, it's talked about how valuable it is. That wisdom is better than jewels, is better than gold, more valuable. There is value in these Proverbs, in this wisdom. Do we value wisdom as we ought to? I think we can all do better at looking, reading, and understanding biblical wisdom, spending daily time in the Proverbs to take in this insight and these lessons from God and apply them to our lives. I want to give some advice that was given to me when I was going through Bible class in high school. When I was first taught the Proverbs, my high school Bible class teacher at the time gave this recommendation, and it's benefited me a lot. There are 31 chapters in Proverbs. It's very conveniently lining up with the days of the month. And so, what he instructed me to do, and I recommend to everyone here as well, is to, depending on the day of the month, Read the proverb chapter aligned with that month. So today is the 14th, I think. Hope I'm right. Read chapter 14 of Proverbs. Meditate on it. Think on it. And do that every day. I'm not always consistent with it, but when I am, it's benefited me greatly because there are different times where different proverbs stick out to me because they resonate with what I'm going through in life. Not everyone will resonate at every time, but if we are constantly spending time in these very applicable, very practical words, we see their influence and their impact in our life. So spend more time in God's wisdom. Value God's wisdom and see its value in your life, how it can bless you, how it can help you succeed. There is great value in wisdom. Wisdom gets us through this life. It helps us handle this life. But eventually this life will come to end. And wisdom will have done its job. But the question left is, what do you have after? God not only offers us wisdom to get through this life, but He's offered us hope for the next life. He's offered us salvation from our shortcomings, from our foolish actions, from our sin. He's offered His own Son to die on our behalf so that we can have a place with Him. And He's made the offer of salvation, to be baptized, to be washed of your sins, and have a relationship with Him to everyone. And if you ignore that call to salvation, that is the most foolish decision you can make. So if you want to live wisely, if you want to walk in the ways of God, you have to first come to God on His terms, be washed of your sins. So if you're sitting there and you would like to start that life with God, if you would like to restore your relationship with Him, you could be baptized this evening and start a walk of wisdom and righteousness. If there's anything else we can do for you, pray about, for you, help you with, please let us know. We care about you and we love you. Please let us know as we stand and sing this invitation song.